Hello and welcome to Parallax, where we look at life from how we work. Joining us today is Marcus Gursky. Marcus is a structural engineer. He works mostly on horizontal structures, that is to say bridges. Marcus, welcome to Parallax.
Thanks for having me.
Can you just walk through what a typical day looks like in your specific field, since you work on bridges?
Okay, so I'll get in there anywhere between 7 and 8. The nice thing about being an engineer is it's really flexible until the deadline hits. So I will juggle maybe 4 or 5 projects at a time. I have 3 or 4 junior engineers under me that I kind of monitor. So in a given day, I might be checking calculations that a junior engineer has done. I'll be doing my own calculations on top of design and mentoring other engineers. I also will manage a project. So that means being the client contact, so the face, the representative to the client. And our clients, since I work in the transportation field, are mostly they're municipal, state, and government, federal government as well. So
you spent some time as a truck driver taking lumber and some other heavy items across country, across Canada, and so when you're driving, you across a bridge, did you think, man, I hope this bridge doesn't collapse under me? Is that when you became interested in structural engineering?
It wasn't, but it's an interesting thing. I do remember going across a lot of bridges that I wondered if the truck would fall through. No, my interest in bridge engineering and structural engineering came later. I actually went from truck driving, into working in the construction field and ran heavy equipment for a number of years. So that's when I really started seeing how amazing it was that you could take, this paper form of, maybe 30 or 50 sheets and then turn it into, this real creation.
What are some of the tools that you use when you're designing something? I'm assuming you're using some kind of computer-aided design software that you're using. I mean, do you ever have to get paper out with protractors and things like that?
It's all slide rule, David. Really?
No.
No, we use a lot of computer software. There are different software applications that are specific to certain types of bridges. We will use analysis tools that don't have a specific object in mind, so they're just basically frame analysis programs that you just input like a stick figure, and it does, and then apply the properties of whatever you're looking at, and it uses finite elements to provide you with reaction forces based on your loadings. But a lot of times we would just break out the pen and paper and just go to town, and it's a lot of just crunching numbers out of your head.
Right.
So,
huh. And are you overseeing? So you create so for a new structure,
mm-hmm.
You're creating the drawings basically. I mean, you're kind of doing the work of an architect and an engineer at the same time, or what's the difference between an engineer and an architect?
Well, in the bridge industry, there's really not a difference. It comes into play mostly in vertical structures or buildings, where an architect will go in and they'll want a certain facade or a certain facing. So they're more about the cladding, like what the building looks like, both inside and out, like what the carpets look like, where the stairways will be, what this entrance will look like. Is it grand? Architects are more about the presentation and the usability of the building, and a structural engineer is more about, well, will it stand up, and they're more utilitarian, usually a little more boring to talk to. Architects are more about pleasing the person that's going to use the environment, and the structural engineer is there to make sure that while that guy's in there, his roof's not going to fall on him. But in bridges, there's not a lot of architectural stuff going on these days, and I feel that that's lacking.
Uh-huh.
Our bridges aren't as pretty as they should be.
So to talk a little bit about the difference between architects and structural engineers, you may go somewhere and say, hey, this is a Frank Lloyd Wright, or a Joel Plitt or something like that. Do you go over a bridge and you're like, yeah, this is a Louis Bernstein?
No.
Are there big names in structural engineering?
There are, but they're mostly historic, and they were mostly architects that were bridge engineers.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, there's not a lot of recognition for the engineer. You'll see that in a building, like some landmark structure. There'll be 4 pages on the architect, and they'll mention the structural engineer at the bottom, like, oh, and the structural engineer for this feat was performed by such and such.
Gotcha. So it's kind of a background role.
Yeah.
Well, Marcus, thanks so much for joining us. You can find out more about Alvey Associates at their website, alveyassociates.com. And until next time, keep it between the white line and the ditches.